Welcome to this episode of the Veterinary Blueprints podcast. I am your host, Bill Butler. This podcast is all about bringing business and entrepreneurship ideas to practice owners and managers. And today I am very happy to be joined by Andrea Crabtree. She is a CVPM and founder of Fur Paws Consulting out of SoCal, California. She focuses on leadership and HR strategies, helping veterinary teams build healthier, more resilient cultures. She has lots of experience. I won't say how much, Andrea, I'll let you do that, but she has lots of experience in practice management. And her team have a mission to shift vet med from burnout and blame to connection and collaboration. Thank you for joining us, Andrea.
Thanks for having me, Bill. I'm super excited to be here today and hang out with you.
I am as well. Now, truth be told, you have your own podcast, which we'll chat about in a little bit, but I was on your podcast. Thank you for having me. You're on my podcast. Thanks for being here. But the burning question, the number one question I have for you is, how does a young little girl in SoCal, California at the age of 4 become a Packers fan?
Yes, so huge Green Bay Packers fan. I will tell you, it started, I was about 4 years old, give or take. And, one itty bitty tiny television, I remember on a Sunday morning in my jammies watching football with my dad. And as a true daddy's girl, I remember him cheering for the team. And the team had these cool cheese hats on. And the colors were great. They were green and gold, right? And I just remember thinking, like, this is fantastic. I want to be this fan too. And he was cheering for them. And my dad is not a Green Bay fan, so he must have been like, didn't like the team that they were playing, or needed that team to win to go into playoffs. So I was cheering for this very cool looking team, and they had cool hats on. And so forever will I be a Green Bay's fan. And my kid now is a Green Bay fan. And like, if you ever want to break into any of my, passwords, everything is Green Bay Packer passwords. And my weight belt is a Green Bay Packers weight belt. And like everything I own is Green Bay Packer. Like, yeah,
the green and gold
Packer fan. Yep, green and gold is cut me and I bleed green and gold for sure.
So that's interesting. So I actually am from Wisconsin originally and lived in Green Bay for 7 years. And so I grew up a Green Bay Packer fan, but I think there's a little bit of an age difference between us. I grew up in the Lynn Dickey era, which was the 80s, which was not a good time. They were one time in the playoffs the entire time Lynn Dickey was there. And so the entire time I lived in Wisconsin in the early part of my life, the Packers made the playoffs one time. So it was the Bears era, and we moved to Minnesota. And long story short, for those who are on video, I am now a huge Minnesota Wild fan, all thing Minnesota sports. But that was curious to me, reading your bio and doing a little research before we got together here on the podcast.
Yeah, my husband's a Tampa Bay fan, so our house is the Battle of the Bays on a regular basis. Sunday mornings, we fight for the remote. Mm-hmm.
The Battle of the Bays. Well, thanks for joining us. We met through Vet Partners, which is an organization of business professionals who specialize in helping veterinarians and everything animal health related in the world. About a year ago, it was my first Vet Partners meeting last fall. And so we connected and we've bumped into each other at some various stuff besides Vet Partners as well. And you just have a really a huge energy behind you, Andrea, and everything you're passionate about. So where did this animal health passion come from? Why did you get into animal health? And give us a little background on how you wound up where you are today.
Yeah, I'd love to. I was recently talking with some colleagues about why I had gotten into vet med. And honestly, it came from my dad. I grew up around animals all my life. I grew up on a ranch when I was younger and have lived that life since I was a wee lass. Always had critters and had come from the background of my dad was a police officer and then animal control because we had a big piece of property. He would always bring critters home from animal control. And it was like, okay, this is the last ditch effort to try to keep this critter alive. So here you go, try to nurse it back to health. And if so, we'll release it into the wild. And if not, like it goes to Jesus and that's okay, right? Survival of the fittest. So I got to nurse critters from when I was, like I said, a wee lass, from just very, very young. So animal husbandry was something that was I was blessed to do from very young. So that carried through my whole life. And then going to college, there was I come from a family of entrepreneurs. There was not anything that really was out there for me, except for going to vet school. I wasn't, you something you go to college for. And I didn't want to go to vet school. I was a single mom, and it was too expensive and a long time. And it just wasn't something that kind of stuck with me, but I knew I wanted to be in animal husbandry. So trying to figure that out and being coming from a family of entrepreneurs, how can I navigate through vet med? So getting a degree in animal health science and then working in animal health in the veterinary space, trying to figure out like, how can I make my degree and my passion for animals? How do I navigate the two of those together? And working in a veterinary hospital, and then realizing like, wow, leadership is something that comes from my family and being an entrepreneur. And so how can I kind of smash all this up together? And through that, and being a practice manager out, but the product was Fur Paws Consulting, and I love it. It's fun. It's great. So that's kind of how that all evolved.
So animals, your whole life, passionate about it. We were chatting before this. I was just on a trip to Wyoming riding horses, and Andrea's questioning Bill's judgment doing that. Like, why would you do that? I mean, I'd never been around horses. You own a horse or have horses growing up around that. I never really got it until I was out in Wyoming riding horses. Like, oh man, these guys are awesome.
It's awesome.
My wife is now very concerned that I'm going to try and buy a horse. I'm like, no, horses are like boats and cabins and everything else. You don't want to actually own them. You want to have friends with horses, or friends with a boat, or friend with a cabin. And so I'm just trying to figure out who I know.
I'll be that friend for you, Bill.
Head down to SoCal and check out your horse. But I know that for you had mentioned this in talking about, our what do we want to chat about on this episode of the podcast. Leadership is really big for you. In leadership and practices, you mentioned it just now, leadership. And so, I think we'll get to leadership in a second, but one of the questions that I had for you was, you're out in practices, you were just at AVMA, which happened a little bit ago, and Vet Partners meeting and around a lot of professional. What are you hearing in the industry here, third, fourth quarter of 2024? I'm sorry, 25 we're in. What's the word on the street with veterinarians, veterinary practices in the consulting world?
Yeah, like you said, I'm in quite a few practices all over the country. So I feel like I have a good pulse on, specifically the practices I'm in are privately owned, smaller practices. So kind of the word on the street in that particular type of a practice. And then what was the buzz and what we talked quite a bit about at the Vet Partners Conference, and then networking at AVMA, quite a bit of discussion really focused around the cost of care and how veterinary medicine has really tried to, I would say, tackle and handle and wrap our head around how we're handling price increases, what we're doing with the price increases to us as the practices when we're getting fee increases from distributors, manufacturers, when we're buying our goods, from employee costs, right? Those costs are skyrocketing and rising. And then how we're handling that to our clients, right? To our pet owners. And some of the practices that haven't taken price increases for years and years, are very nominal price increases. I see some of them are really, really trying to spike those increases now, and we're really seeing large shifts of price increases. And some practices I know are doing quarterly, semi-annual, if not regular annual increases, upwards of like 10, 15%. And that's significant, especially if that's regular.
Yeah.
And then practices that haven't or have been consistent when they've been doing price increases, are still doing that same amount. And I think to myself, like, wow, we can only do that for so long before that's really not going to be our
Yeah, it's
answer.
not sustainable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in the insurance world, where everyone's complaining about price increases and premium increases on their insurance, and when you talk about how you take pricing increases as a veterinary practice, let's say I've got my cat Louie, my little buddy, and I bring him in for my one time annually, but you're taking a monthly or a quarterly increase. Well, I'm going to eat four increases, bringing him in one time a year, and so thinking about where those increases happen, how you're putting them in play versus, a one-time annual increase. But it's hard because if distributors are taking increases on you three times a year, it's hard to say, well, we're just going to do one because you take an increase and then 2 months later, distributor takes an increase on you. You're like, okay, well, now I'm back to where I was before I took my increase.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And I think that may even get worse if we're starting to see some of our products have a significant increase with the
Yeah.
tariffs. If we start seeing those tariffs start to hit us, where before I don't know that we did, and now I'm not sure if we will
Yeah.
start seeing some of those even more significant increases. I think that's kind of like still to be determined. So if we start seeing that, oh, right, like how much more
Yeah.
can we
How's that gonna
sustain?
work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I've got another question for you in that realm, talking about, because you'd mentioned team staffing costs. Um, and I know a lot of the startup practices that we work with across the country are really trying to be competitive in the benefit space, because all the corporates out there they have the ability from scale to offer much more robust benefit packages. And I don't think that it was a case where you had an independently owned, privately held practice who didn't want to offer benefits before. I think they looked at it as, I don't know if I can afford it. Now I see many of them feel that they can't not offer benefits
Mm-hmm.
to be
Mm-hmm.
competitive in the marketplace to attract talent. What are you seeing?
Yeah, and it's really understanding the 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 total compensation package.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, I talk with, I sit on the board of one of the RVT schools locally, and I talk with the students, and I really say it's not about your wage, right? And
Yeah.
I say that to practice owners all the time. It's not about the wage, it's about your total compensation package. So look at things of, it's not even just your benefits like your health insurance or your dental insurance, right? It's like, look at everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always what they're putting in your benefit package, but what are they putting into your culture even too, right? And so is there a culture of maybe some benefits around flexibility of scheduling?
Sure.
So, as a profession that's 80% women, we tend to have babies, believe it or not. And so sometimes we need some flexibility with having a flexible schedule. And honestly, that goes with dads as well. If they need some flexibility with benefits of scheduling, I got to pick up my kiddo from dance class or take my kiddo to soccer, or, those types of things.
It can even
So
just go towards your
is that a
attitude.
benefit?
It can even just go towards your attitude as a business overall, veterinary practice or otherwise, about how you support your team. Like, here at Butler Vet Insurance, we give all of our team members 30 days of PTO a year. So that equates to 6 weeks of vacation if you include weekends.
Mm-hmm,
So that's a
mm-hmm.
pretty big chunk.
Yeah.
But, I can't afford to pay what some of the huge commercial insurance shops pay from a salary perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
I can give, 30 days off a year PTO. And, there's different states have different rules with safe and sick time and paid family leave and these sorts of things. But if you give a very robust time off schedule, and I think it's important to ask your team what's important to them, because it's not always
Exactly.
about money.
Survey the team.
It's
Yep.
about what's important to them. Like, hey, if you offer some spiffs, I mean, my agent Tyler, one of the biggest things I can do for him is look him in the eye, shake his hand on Friday, and say thanks for a good job done. Like, he would rather have that than $100.
Yeah,
And everyone's a little
exactly.
bit
Yep.
different in what they want versus that. Last thought on that, Andrea, is one thing that I've done and has been successful for me just from showing benefits is I show my share of FICA, Social Security. I show my share of workers' compensation, payroll. I show what 3% match on our simple IRA is. And I think, and you say, this is how much you're going to get paid. It's really easy to get wrapped into, this is your hourly rate. This is what you get paid for the year. But what's my total cost as a business owner? Maybe not every single thing, but the biggies, right? What's my share of FICA, Social Security? What's my share of workers' compensation? We buy errors and emissions insurance here in the insurance industry. I pay for your veterinary professional. That's $500. So, all those line items, and it winds up saying, okay, well, you're making, $50,000 a year, but when you total up everything you get from working here as an employee, it's really $75,000 when you total in benefits or, whatever it is.
The cost, the total cost. Yeah.
And so, I think showing the team, they're like, oh yeah, that actually is a pretty big chunk of money that you're outlining.
Do that for employee reviews. I do encourage managers to list all that out when they do employee reviews, so the employees can see the cost of everything, their benefits, workers' comp, all of those things, so that they can see, that not only what you're getting, but on the business aspect of it too. What is this costing the business?
Yeah.
And
it's not just perks of, it's not just $17 an hour, $22 an hour.
That's right. It's not just the wage. Yes.
Because and I think sharing some of that with your team does also help pull back the curtain from the stress of owning a business. And like, oh, that's a lot of money. And there's 15 of us.
Exactly.
There's 15 of us. Because I think it's easy as an employee somewhere to get put into your little bubble and your blinders and just worry about you saying, well, I'm making 22 and she's making 23, or if he's making.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yep. That's why I say it's not just about your hourly rate. There's so much more involved. Yeah.
So a lot of pressure out there on the pricing model stuff, but some of that's out of our control. So that's some of the buzz on the street. But I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about leadership, because I know you're very passionate about that. And how do we improve leadership in vet med, especially knowing that resilience isn't really a core taught skill?
Yeah. Wow. So how much time do we have? Right.
Well, not as much as you could cover, but let's give the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah. It's such a hard question just to tackle in like a one line.
Answer this one question very simply. How do we improve leadership?
Yeah. Right. Education, right? Commitment, training, collaboration. I would say, I think what we do on a whole is we pick the most experienced person or someone we trust, and we promote from within. Yeah. And I think that's great, right? We pick the RVT, CVT, LVT that's been with the profession the longest, or the practice the longest, or the CSR that's been there the longest. And we say, hey, you're promoted to practice manager, or hey, you're the front office manager, or hey, you're going to start doing inventory. And that's great because we trust that person, or, again, we promote from within. But what we do is we put that person in a quote leadership position, and then we say, go team. Yeah. And we don't give them the support, the training, the time that person needs. And then, by the way, they're still supposed to be doing the other job that they are hired to do.
I didn't backfill the LVT position that you were doing. That's right. And so you're doing that 80% of the time.
And now they have another hat on.
Yeah, I put full-time inventory manager.
Yeah. So I would say to improve leadership is to recognize that person needs leadership development and training. And so there's so much CE available, right? There's so many different resources inside vet med and outside of vet med. And so give that person in your practice, and honestly, give everybody in your practice an opportunity to be off the floor, right? Out of their job, and give them time to attend some CE. And maybe that CE is listening to a podcast for an hour a week. Yeah. And give them time to say, hey, that's paid, that's off the clock, right? Or not off the clock, but paid, but like off the floor time that says, I need you to listen to this book, listen to CE, go to an event, go to a webinar, go to a class. And there's so much that's virtual. They can sit in an exam room. They can go into surgery when there's no surgeries being done. We have plenty of square footage in our practices that's not being utilized 100% of the time. Take a laptop, take some earbuds, go sit, do a webinar, go listen to a book on tape, whatever it is. Find a resource that you can say, go listen to this leadership class, go take an inventory class, go listen to something on DEA, go listen to something about your local veterinary medical boards, something, whether compliance, HR, wherever it is that will help the practice grow, help that person grow, whether it's, I mean, there's so many topics,
Yeah.
but some type of leadership that is going to help that person's skill set grow and develop, that invest in the person and will invest in your practice. Absolutely 100%. Right. So I just think that we miss that component when we promote people. And even when we hire externally, even somebody, coming in, CVPM, MBA, like they may know their stuff, but oh my gosh, invest in that person just as much as veterinarians are, need their CE, right? And the latest and the greatest. Like invest in leadership development and send them to a conference or get them CE, teach them on an ongoing basis what that looks like, and collaborate. Oh my goodness, collaborate, like have some communication and talk and work together on what the practice needs. I think that's a huge missing piece of how our practices function.
Why do you think that's missing?
As a whole.
Why do you think that's missing from practices where they aren't investing, or they're not signing their team, or they're not, do they just, why do you see that as a hurdle?
I think because we always have a case. There's always a case. There's always another case. And there's always going to be another case. There's always something to do. And so to take somebody off the floor means we're taking somebody away from another case. And there's another case. And by the way, there's another case. And oh yeah, guess what? There's another case.
Yeah.
And we just don't make time for it. We don't make space for it. We don't allow for that.
It's easy to say, well, take some CE next month, and then next month comes and the calendar's full, and then the next month comes and the calendar's full. It's about being intentional with coming up with a plan of saying, okay, by the end of this time, we're going to have X amount done, or you're going to have this designation.
Yeah.
You had said something before we hopped on that was an interesting statistic. And it was the number of practices, number of practice managers, and then number of CVPMs. And what was that? What were those numbers again that you kind of rattled off?
So there's 1,000 CVPMs, and we just are in the middle actually of another testing. So I promise you, there's just over 1,000. There was just under, and since we're testing right now, there's just over 1,000 CVPMs in the United States and Canada, and there's over 35,000 veterinary hospitals. So that's do the
across
math.
Small animal, large animal, mixed, corporate. It doesn't matter. We're talking about practice managers who really, as you talked about it, this could be somebody who started working in a vet practice out of high school, maybe didn't go to college, worked in a practice for 5, 10, 15 years, got promoted to practice manager. And now you have, somebody with potentially just a high school diploma running a $2 or $3 million revenue business, hiring, firing, inventory, like everything, payroll, insurance, all those things, technology, and they, we're not investing in them enough.
Yeah, it's disheartening to hear that we only have 1,000 certified veterinary practice managers. I know obviously we're growing by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
When I became a certified, I won't even say when, a few years ago, there was only 350. And so we've grown exponentially for sure. And we're still young. I think we're probably 30 years in, maybe. Yeah, I think just over 30 years in. So, hey, we're still young. But getting the word out that the certification, is out there, and there's some actual training that's involved.
Well, and that's where the collaboration you're talking about comes from, is being with your peers. And in the insurance industry, people who sit in my chair who own an insurance agency are so worried about their staff going somewhere and hearing about another opportunity and leaving and saying, oh, I could make more money over here. But really, as I'm sure you'll affirm, like if you build a really good culture and somebody's happy to work for you, it doesn't really matter what they hear somewhere else. They're still going to come back home, even if they're going to a course. I know that's a huge hesitation in my industry about sending out young go-getters to get education in the insurance industry, because they're hesitant to they might get poached somewhere. It's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, it's going to happen no matter what, because first of all, if they're looking for another job, like they're not going to find it at VHMA. They're going to find it at their practice next door. And if they're looking for another job, then there's something wrong with your practice, right? Like, and hopefully if there is something wrong at your practice, then your practice manager is going to come back with some ideas of how to fix
how to fix it versus I don't want to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. And so be open to the ideas that the practice manager brings back to your practice. That the VHMA conference is next month in New Orleans, and I'm looking forward to that. They're definitely energizing.
Yeah.
Practice managers come back just super jazzed about the stuff they've learned. They can't wait to get back to their practice.
Well, you don't want to tamp that down when they come back either. You want to like encourage that, like, okay,
yes,
roll with it.
Yeah.
What can you do to make this better? Instead of like, well, I don't know if we can do that. Like,
yeah.
What do you think?
It's not if we can, it's how we can.
Yeah. How can we do it?
Yeah.
With my team, it's funny because we do offer that PTO I mentioned. One of the first things because my team, because we're very much on LinkedIn, some of them, they're getting hit, weekly, couple times a month from recruiters. And the first thing, if they ever respond, one of my agents always responds back is, yeah, I currently have 30 days of PTO and I get that day one. So do I get that day one with you? And the answer is always no. Like, well, no, you don't get 30 days of PTO day one starting. And so, again, it's about building and mostly he just likes to send it to see what their answer is. And then he always comes into my office and says, hey, guess what? I just heard this from, agency, whatever, or carrier, whatever. They just offered this. And I laughed at him. It's about building that culture and leadership. And so, you talked about leadership gaps in practices. What can we do to support some of the veterinarians, either veterinary practice owners or associates within practices from leadership and have them step up a little bit more in leadership roles?
I would say the same thing is give them the support that they need as far as like time off the floor. Make sure that they're able to go to a leadership development class. Make sure associates don't even understand that they are considered leaders in the practice. So first of all, like let them know if you have initials after your name, DVM, RVT, LVT, CVT, CVPM, like you are a leader. Some of them don't recognize that. Anybody in the practice is going to look at an associate and say, hey, you are a leader. So you are put on a pedestal. So first identify with the fact that you are a leader. So people are looking to you to lead. And then time away from doing the job that you regularly do and invest in them to say, hey, go to a leadership class. And this is not like, hey, I'm going to go to a conference and learn more about diabetes or eyeballs. Like that's great. And you should, but you also need to be going to a communication class and how to be a leader class and all the things that our, leaders should be doing. And practice owners, I would say, encourage your associates to attend those types of classes and make it mandatory as part of their CE allowance to say so much of your CE needs to be on this subject, right? And involve your associates in your leadership meetings. And hopefully they're all having leadership meetings, monthly, if not weekly leadership meetings, and bring your associates in once a month to those meetings and say, hey, what can you contribute?
How do we improve? So you'd mentioned collaboration and, you and I both work in a similar realm where it's more the private independently owned practices versus the corporate. And I think there probably used to be a lot more view of competition amongst each other, amongst veterinarians on the private side, but now it's a little bit more collaboration of the privates versus the corporate, not getting into the politics of that. Cause I think every part of it has a role in animal health, but are you seeing more of a shift towards collaboration amongst private practice owners versus competition?
Gosh, I would love to say yes, but honestly, I still feel like the answer is no.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I'll tell you, because veterinarians, to get into vet school is cutthroat. It's competition.
Sure.
And the people that get into vet school have to be competitive from the get-go, right? They need to be valedictorians. They need to be super, super competitive to even get to the top so that they can get into vet school. So from day one, they're competing with their peers. Yes. And so when they get into practice, they're already competitive, right? And And
It's
so,
interesting.
and then to get the job they want has to be competitive.
It's interesting because everyone in the insurance world is like, oh, you must, for, from the practices you work with, you must get a lot of referrals. I'm like, nah, not really. Like they don't refer, they're not like, oh, you should go get your insurance from Bill. He's a great guy. They're like, they don't want to share me because I'm the secret or whatever. And so I'm like, yeah, they're kind of competitive. They're very insular. They're in their own thing. And I think there's some collaboration amongst, usually it's who they went to school with. It's their class.
Yes, it's their classmates.
But beyond
Yeah, because
that,
there's safety in there.
yeah, there's
right?
safety in there. We went through this arduous process together, but it's not as it's oddly not as there's less collaboration here. Like even in the insurance industry, I have competitors locally in the insurance world, and like I've known them for 15 years. They're great people. Like they've taken some clients from me. I've taken some clients from them. It's just the way insurance is. We rarely step on each other's toes, but I feel like there's a lot more. What do you think would happen to the industry if there was just more collaboration amongst privately owned?
Gosh, the mountains that we could climb, right? The things that we could accomplish would be phenomenal if we could just do a little bit more collaboration. And I see that I was talking to Jeff and Dave at the Vet Tech Cafe podcast not too long ago. And one of the big things that we talked about on that podcast was collaboration. And if we could collaborate for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, we could, come up with maybe on the technician side, coming up with a consensus on what we're going to call everybody.
Sure.
Right. I mean, not even agree on what they can do as technicians, but let's just agree on a name for the technicians, right? So the things we could accomplish.
Are you a technician, or are you an assistant, or
CVT, LVT, or RVT? But if we could collaborate more, the things that we could do, but everybody has, a different agenda, and we're different states, and we have different, medical boards, and we have different governing rules. And so there's just a lot of challenges and hurdles, and we just we don't collaborate as much as I would like to see. And I'm very fortunate because in Orange County in California, we have Dr. Peter Weinstein has made a group, Vets for Pets, and they are a group of veterinarians, and there's a bunch of managers in there too. They're very, very collaborative. And then that has really kind of spilled over when he was the executive director of the SCVMA into our SCVMA, and then has spilled over into our managers group. And we have a very collaborative and networking group of managers. So our Orange County area is extremely collaborative, and we have a huge managers network here that is that way. And so we can see
just
those
a question.
benefits.
So all those practices that collaborate with each other in SoCal, are they booked out? Are their appointments full? Are they struggling?
Right. We're extremely successful. Our practice managers, I'm just going to say this because this is my opinion. It's totally may not be factual, but we have a very, very concentrated amount of CVPMs in our local area. And that is specifically from our group. Like we grow a lot of CVPMs here. We mentor a lot of CVPMs. I would venture to say we probably per capita have the most CVPMs. And then our practices benefit from that, right? We have a lot of practices here anyway, just because of our state, but we have a lot of successful practices. And that's from, our managers networking. And we have a lot of managers groups. We probably have 6 managers groups just here in this local SoCal area.
I was going to ask about that. Specifically, just thinking of some of the things that I've done with, whether it's well-managed practice group or VMG. I mean, I think within those groups and, Blue Heron Consulting, I was just out on a trip with them into Wyoming, and, the collaboration amongst the veterinarians at that trip who had never met each other, but are willing to share, have conversations and talk. I think if you break down the barrier of like competition into more of how can we help each other in this industry, and you create some groups, whether, like I said, there's plenty out there, VMG, well-managed practice group, independent, or, your veterinary, your VHAs, your veterinary hospital, or your veterinary managers association stuff that's out there. I think the more you collaborate, the more you can just I've got a question of how to do this. How do you guys do it? Okay. And
phone a friend.
and 80% of the time you have
Yeah.
the right answer. You just need somebody to say, yeah, that's how we do it too. I'm like, okay, good. Now I can make this decision. Somebody else
Yes.
back me up. I know this is the
Yes.
right thing to do. Or they just say, well, I would say it like this, that's the right decision, but I'd say it like this, like, oh, that's a really good way to say that. Thanks. Whatever it
Yeah.
is.
And that's how our managers are too. Like, don't reinvent the wheel,
Yeah.
right? There's plenty of managers that have gone before you and like, don't do it this way because I did it and failed epically.
Yeah.
Like, don't do this. Try anything but this.
This worked
right?
really well. Do this. Don't do this.
Don't do this. Yeah.
So let's chat as we're starting to wrap up here, Andrea. Let's chat about Fur Paws Consulting, what you offer services. Obviously very knowledgeable leadership. You've been around the industry for quite a while. You see a lot of stuff around the country. What do you do at Fur Paws? What sets you apart, or what do you like doing with practices through your consulting business?
Yeah. So as a practice manager for 20 plus years, I and in practices almost every day, different types of practices, mainly small animal, privately owned, smaller practices, but mixed animal, small animal, specialty, GP, the whole rigmarole, whether they're rural or big practices, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's all about what a practice manager, all the different hats a practice manager has to wear. And it's working with leadership teams. And sometimes that team could be a practice owner and that's it.
Yeah.
And a small, 2, 3, 4 employee practice. And sometimes even a mobile practice with one practice owner and that's it. And then sometimes a leadership team could be a team of 15, right? With a big leadership team. And so working with practice owners and their leadership team and understanding what the challenges they face. And those challenges are different depending on the practice,
sure.
Right? Most challenges are HR related. And so I will say peopling. Peopling is really, really hard.
It is
I
really
usually
hard.
say it's like icky, sticky, smells like parvo, right? Peopling is difficult. It's a struggle. So it's a lot of coaching on communications, how we did it, what was the struggle there, and then, working through that at a lot of HR credentials. So understanding the HR aspect of it. And sometimes there's just logistics. It's, HR is tough in that sense of how do I hire? How do I fire? How do I retain? What are some good strategies with culture? And some of them are logistics when it comes to things like, what posters do I need up? What's the DEA rules on this? What's the Veterinary Medical Board say about this? What am I supposed to do about compliance on OSHA? Just logistics of keeping your practice open, finances, KPIs, all things a practice owner and manager has to deal with. I mean, I was trying to find insulin for a practice yesterday, right? It just depends on what a practice needs. And being a practice manager for such a long time before I went into consulting, I always say it's like from plumbing to selling, right? It just depends on what a practice manager has to deal with for that day.
And I know you bring a lot of passion behind it. You're an awesome individual and you have a lot of stuff going on. So you have your own podcast. Why don't you give a plug for that real quick? Because I was on that. A lot of fun to be on that podcast. Give your podcast. We'll have all of this in the show notes for listeners, but just give a quick plug for your podcast. I'll come back as soon as he's done blowing. Okay, let me mark this clip.
Sorry about that.
That's
yes,
okay.
My podcast is Positive Leadership Podcast. My co-host is David Liss, and we have a hoot. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the show.
It was an awesome time.
We talk about all things leadership, and we lean into some of the harder subjects. I know there's been some talk about, podcasts. We should kind of stay neutral and never upset anybody. And David and I tend to lean into some of the harder stuff. I will say don't listen to the podcast if your kids are in the car. But we do have a good time. We try to bring a different guest on each time and pick their favorite thing to talk about. So guess what we talked about with Bill on the show? Yes, insurance.
Yeah, we talked about insurance, but we don't talk about insurance here. I bring that to other podcasts. I don't want to bore everyone with insurance here. So we try and bring on people who are more excited.
You could never be boring, Bill.
Well, I don't know.
You're pretty fun. But it's
Thank
fun.
you.
It's a great
It is. It
podcast.
was a good
We do
time.
have a lot of fun. We try to keep it fun and uplifting, and tell some funny stories and ask some funny questions. So that's fun. But there's tons of these types of fun things that I did not have when I was a manager, learning how to be a manager, getting into veterinary medicine. We just didn't have those things around 20 years ago. So I enjoy being able to bring those things to young managers, young leaders that didn't have those types of resources. But yeah, good. It's fun.
There is
Yeah.
no shortage of opportunity to learn out there, and we're collaborating on an event. This will come out before this happens. So even if you can't register in time or registration's full, why don't you talk about what's new on the horizon for Fur Paws Consulting and what you've got happening that we're collaborating on early next year?
I am super excited about this one. The Veterinary Leadership Workshop, the Veterinary Executive Leadership Workshop, that's coming in February at the first of the year. We are going to be doing a 2-day workshop with 5 different modules. Let's see, we're going to be doing HR, insurance, legal, law, finance, and some tax planning type things. So we're executive leadership. So we're looking at practice owners, practice administrators, practice managers. It will be limited probably to about 80 seats. It will be held in Southern California.
February, good
really
time to be in SoCal,
fun.
learning how to be a
Yes.
better executive in your role at your
Yes.
practice.
I am super excited about putting this one on. So I've done about 7 different symposiums in the past. And so this one, we're going to switch it up a little bit different and put a twist on it. And I'm excited of having you there as well. And you and I are going to MC and have a little bit of fun that last little bit of the day with some summary stuff. I'm excited for that too. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. Planning and leadership stuff. So, you've got a lot going on. So for those practice managers listening or veterinary practice owners listening, make sure to keep up with what Andrea and her team at Fur Paws Consulting have going on, because there's a lot going on. She's putting out a lot of stuff, and she just knows a ton of people in the industry. If you want to go to an event, hang out with Andrea for 10 minutes, like, I got to go talk to them and I know them. And she knows everyone. It's a great person to connect with. And it's been awesome hanging out with you the last year or so here in the vet industry as we're bopping around the country at different things. So thanks so much for being on, Andrea. Really appreciate your insights and leadership, all things practice manager and practice owner related.
Thanks, Phil. This was fun. I appreciate you having me on today.
Awesome. As always, make sure to listen, like, and share the podcast. Give us a review. Share it with a friend or colleague out there. It helps with the algorithms, the internet bots in the back end. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great day.